Welcome to the future, where the glass is half full and you'll need new glasses, where you'll be jumping from conclusions.
The past is annulled, and a new future is born.
Never before in history has so much meant so little to so many. AD on the radio.
So, it's not a frequent occurrence that I wonder what we're going to talk about on this show. Usually there's several issues so demanding of our attention that it's almost a difficulty getting to all of them. We're never short of things to say. But if you're like me, occasionally you get bored. You kind of get bored of hearing about what everybody is talking about. You kind of get bored of the same old conversation. And look, there's been a couple of you that have said, hey, AD, I want to know about this, whatever this pressing issue of the day is. People are upset. People are angry. People are arguing. What do you think of this? We kind of come to this show for a little bit more of a balanced perspective and something that's closer to fact or truth. So what do you think of this? And oftentimes when the rest of the news media world is falling all over each other to beat one another to the punch with the incendiary headline that's going to lead to lots of clicks and big dollars, I sit back a little bit because that's their time to rabble rouse. That's their time to try and fearmonger. That's their time to sensationalize. That's their time to try and cash in on something that only vaguely approximates the truth. And it's my time to take things in. If we're thinking about the truth, if we're thinking about a divisive issue, and we're thinking about the topic of the day that everybody is very opinionated about and they've got strong feelings about, and anybody that disagrees with them is a evil a-hole that hates America, well, that's the time where you kind of like to hang back a little bit. And when you weigh in, you like for it to be a little bit more educated. So there's times where there's no shortage of stuff to talk about, but I just find it a little dull or a little preemptive to weigh in hard and heavy on certain things. And those are the days, I suppose, where I open up the paper or the digital version of the paper and I start sort of leafing through and going, what is going on in the world? What are people not talking about? What are people missing? Maybe we should discuss some of that on the show. And it was one such day today where I was flipping through and I was shocked. I was aghast. I was amazed. I don't even know what weird wormhole I went down to discover this piece of news, this piece of information, but I could not believe who was back. And I guess, he did go away for a little bit and then got right back up in the game. And I was shocked and somewhat dismayed at the critical thinking of folks that this guy's still allowed to do what he does and have a career. And when I say allowed to do what he does and have a career, it's not like the law would prevent him from doing it. He should have just been put out of business by the court of public opinion. I'm talking about, do you remember Jim Bakker? Yeah, Jim and Tammy Faye, the PTL network? Sam Kinison did that great bit on him. That's how far back this goes. And Jesus is going through the Bible going, where did I say to build a water slide? I didn't say build an old folks home and use it as tax write-off. And he was the guy that sort of did all sorts of shady stuff with Jessica Hahn, the Playboy chick back in the day. Well, she wasn't the Playboy chick. She was just sort of, I think, his secretary. And then, she got naked in Playboy after the whole scandal came out, and he went on TV crying and going, I have sinned. And his wife, Tammy Faye Bakker, was like, it ain't over till it's over. And well, we all thought it was over, and apparently not so much. Bit of a premonition on Tammy Faye's part that the career of her then husband, Jim Bakker, would be such a storied thing that, could take a licking and keep on ticking. Did you know this guy was still around? Did you have any idea that folks still were sending them all sorts of money? Yeah, absolutely true. Jim Bakker is making a mint. And you know what Jim Bakker is making a mint off of? Like I said, I don't know how I found this story, but I was aghast. And maybe maybe you watch him on TV, or maybe you were aware of him. Maybe you've sent him money in the hopes that, you're going to survive the apocalypse in one of his Missouri cabins. Yeah. One of his Missouri cabins. This is the new racket the guy's got going on. And we'll get into exactly what this guy's doing and why It boggles my freaking mind that he's allowed to continue doing it, that the court of public opinion hasn't deemed him someone that needs to go away forever and just, shut the hell up until he leaves this mortal coil, until he shuffles off. He needs to do everything he can to not remind people he's around. No, quite the opposite. He loves the limelight and he loves a lot of it, and the scam he is running is unfreaking believable. It's outrageous, it's absurd, it's ridiculous, it's insane, and it seems to be working out just great for him. What are we talking about? We'll get into all of this, unbelievably, next. Yeah, Jim freaking Bakker in the news. Go figure.
Real radio.
104.1.
Where the left and right come together for fundamental truths. AD on the radio, on Twitter at ADSXE.
So do you remember Jim Bakker, Jim and Tammy Faye Bakker and the Praise the Lord Network? For me, it was sort of the stuff of legend. And I think the way I found out about Jim and Tammy Faye Bakker, or at least became aware of them, was, I found somebody's dad's copy of Playboy when I was a kid, and a woman called Jessica Hahn was in it. And Jessica Hahn was rather easy on the eyes. And I'm leafing as a child through this issue of Playboy that I really shouldn't have come across. And I always heard people say, I get it for the articles. Yeah, that's what I get it for. So I decided I would actually read some of the printed words next to Jessica Hahn, because I got to say, the young me was quite taken with her beauty. And I was like, what's the deal? Whoa, hold on. She used to be a church secretary, and she used to work for some guy called Jim Bakker, and he went away in disgrace. And, I didn't really put it all together. But over the years, little bits and pieces of information came in about this guy who I guess at the time was in jail. And if it predates you, or if you don't remember, or if you just want to relive those heady days of the Praise the Lord Network, if you were around at the time, back in the 1980s, Jim Bakker and his first wife, Tammy Faye Bakker, they had this massive television ministry. It's called PTL, Praise the Lord. And, Tammy Faye Bakker was known just as much for the amount of pancake makeup she smeared all over her grim visage as she was for her undying faith. And they were funded by contributions. People sent them their money, under the impression, I suppose, that they would get into heaven faster if they did so. But they put it to some pretty creative uses. And this is, I think, where the legendary Sam Kinison bit comes in, where he goes, Jesus is up in heaven going through the Bible saying, where did I say to build a water slide? I didn't say build an old folks home and use it as tax write-off. Oh, come on. But the PTL ministry, Jim and Tammy Faye Bakker, built a Christian theme park. Heritage USA in Fort Mill, South Carolina. The park sat on 23 beautiful, lush acres, had a water slide, and was the third most visited theme park in the U.S. in '86 after Walt Disney World and Disneyland. So it was like the two Disney theme parks, then the Praise the Lord Jim and Tammy Faye Bakker extravaganza. And they were making money hand over fist. And they were taking large sums of that money that they were saying was going to, charity and missionary work and things of that nature as a personal fund. They bought more than, and this is 80s money, remember, $900,000 worth of cars, along with a whole bunch of real estate, several California homes, and they drew massive salaries and even more massive bonuses, and did so without really having to pay a ton in the way of taxes, or at least that's what they thought. And it all went horribly wrong when it turned out this woman that I'd seen in Playboy as a young strip of a lad kind of blew the whistle on him. Back in the day, Jim was forced to resign from the PTL ministry. It was a sex scandal that was about to be exposed by his quote-unquote treacherous friends. He said that his treacherous friends had conspired to betray him. And basically it all came out that he'd done less than Christian things to the church secretary, Jessica Hahn, who got sad, then got famous, then got a bunch of plastic surgery, then got in Playboy, then got on the Howard Stern show, and kind of became a ubiquitous part of the sexual zeitgeist of America. But he was also prosecuted for fraud and conspiracy, and he served, I think, 5 years in jail. While he was in jail, his wife divorced him. And you would think a guy who had passed himself off as a man of the cloth and then been revealed to be as crooked as they come would have gone away forever. No. Back up in the game. 100% back up in the game. New wife, new show, new stuff that he's hawking. And it's the stuff that he's selling that blows my mind. Well, okay. No, the stuff that Jim Bakker is selling does not blow my mind. I shouldn't be surprised. He's a bottom-feeding, shisty, lying, cheating, swindling scumbag of an individual. Always has been, always will be. It's not so much what he's selling that blows my mind. It's the fact that he seems to be doing rather well selling it because tons of freaking people are buying it. How on earth could this be? I don't know. But I suppose it speaks to the power of faith, and it speaks to the power of religion, and it speaks to the power of the fear that sometimes goes hand in hand with these things. And well, it's that fear that can be used to divest a fool from their earthly possessions. It's that fear that can be used to sell the most ridiculous ideas. Everything from salvation to a very, very bizarre type of survival. And I say bizarre type of survival because that's the game that Jim Bakker is in. He's become sort of a cross between a crazy televangelist and a survivalist, Alex Jones-esque conspiracy theorist fearmonger, and there appears to be big, big dollars in this. Here I am doing everything I can to bring you a person who I respect, who I know is an intelligent person that seeks and cares about the truth. Here I am, busting my hump trying to make it happen in that department when, man, there is great money in lying to morons and taking their cash from them. Seems so simple, or at least that's the way Jim Bakker makes it seem. What exactly is he selling? Like I said, it'll blow your mind that people are buying it, and we'll get into it next.
For more stimulation and less irritation, 9 out of 10 doctors choose KPRC AM 950, Houston's more stimulating talk radio.
Don't get the blues, get all the news. We mean all of you guys out there in Radioland. All aboard!
He's back. AD on the radio.
Give it up, yeah. Give it up, yeah. Bring this on, come on.
So you and I will get into exactly what Jim Bakker is selling and how miraculous it is that people are buying it in just a little bit. The fact that this guy's allowed to exist, the fact that this guy's allowed to have a career after what happened to him the first time out, after he was sent to jail for 5 years, after it was the massive scandal where it turned out that he was spending all sorts of money that was supposed to go to missionary work and charities on millions of dollars worth of cars and houses and, you know, having affairs with church secretaries. The fact that he was embraced by the religious and spiritual community with open arms to the point where they watch his show and send him their money still, even after his time in the joint for doing all the things that he did. It's just, well, it's something I just do not understand. But it happens. So we're going to try and understand this. And we're also going to try and understand what it is he's selling. It's a bizarre type of survival. It's a bizarre type of salvation. But before we get into that, I wanted to tell you about being a kid. Do you remember going to church when you were a kid? When I was a kid, my grandpa took me to church. I must have been about 4 or 5 years old. I loved hanging out with my grandfather. Always, because, well, he was a sweet old guy. He talked like the people on the old-timey Stan Freberg radio recordings I used to enjoy listening to did. And also, whenever I hung out with my grandpa, it was pretty much a given that there would be ice cream. Ice cream would be involved. He loved ice cream. He also loved to take his grandchildren for ice cream. It was a win-win situation. But a couple times he took me to church to see his pastor, Father Phil, give a sermon. And I don't know why, but I've always liked churches. I've never really had religion per se. I guess I'm sort of spiritually searching. I'm ready, willing, and open to being struck by a lightning bolt of something. I'm available. But even as a 4 or 5 year old, I noticed something when I walked into a church, even if I wasn't raised as religious as my grandfather was. He was super religious, and he sort of beat my mom over the head with religion, I think, and all of her brothers and sisters. And by the time they grew up, they were like, well, maybe we can skip a generation of going every Sunday. But I enjoyed going to church with my grandfather, and I noticed something when I walked into the church. Do you feel it when you go into churches? It's the same feeling that I get when I walk into a nice library, or when I took a walk around the grounds of an old Ivy League college a little while ago. Maybe you're religious, maybe you're not. But churches are places of thought, and churches are places of learning and respect and reverence. It's almost like the air in a church is different, or it moves somehow at a different speed. Or like the silence inside of a church sounds different than the silence that you hear outside of a church. Does that make sense? It was always sort of like an incredible place to me as a child. So I was totally going into church with Grandpa. And I remember as a kid listening to the sermon, old Father Phil. Apparently, old Father Phil was on his A game that day, throwing the heat of the gospel. And at some stage in the game, there's talk of bringing people to God, bringing people to the church, that specific church that we were in, and growing the congregation, and growing the church, and growing the flock, which I thought was kind of interesting. And I remember I got crackers and I got grape juice every morning for snack in grade school, and it was kind of an ongoing question in my mind how when I got the crackers and some grape juice in church, it was the body and blood of Christ, but an hour before recess, not so much. I didn't quite get it. And wondering if the crackers and the grape juice are the body and the blood of God's Son, how come they're not labeled that way when I go with Mom to the grocery store? Anyways, we're snacking on the body and the blood of God's Son, and afterwards the collection plate comes around and I see everyone giving money. And I'm sort of taking it all in. And I want to fit in. I want to be a big boy. I want to make everybody proud and let everybody know I'm capable of handling my spiritual business. So I dig into my pocket and I get out my 50 cents or my $1 or whatever when the collection plate comes by. And I put it on the plate. And my grandfather starts to tell me I don't have to. But I insist. And he's thrilled. So after church, we're in the car on our way to Friendly's ice cream place. Have you ever been to one of those? Oh, Friendly's are so good. I think they're more or less a Northeastern thing. And the food's just sort of okay. Nothing wrong with it, but it's not necessarily anything to write home about. But the ice cream at Friendly's, oh man. Like if you ever see one of them, I think they might have them in Florida. We're on in Orlando and Palm Beach, and I think they have Friendly's in Florida's. But if you ever see one of them, get yourself this thing called a fribble. Oh man. Now that is a religious experience. It's this enormous thick milkshake, and it comes in one of those old school metal tumblers, and it's just freaking incredible. And I'm trying to make up my mind between the Fribble or the Super Sundae at Friendly's when I'm there with my grandfather. But I'm a little distracted because my grandpa is talking to me, saying what a nice thing it was to have made a donation to the collection plate and how that sort of thing has a way of coming back to you. And I was going to experience the benefit of it. And I remember asking him, you like that church, right? And he was like, oh, yeah, of course. Been going there for years. And I asked him, well, why do you want it to change? Do you want it to change? And he was like, no, not especially. I don't want it to change. I chose it because I like how it is. That's why I go to that church. And I was like, well, then why do you want it to get bigger? We got good seats. And I got to talk to Father Phil afterwards. And he was talking about growing the church. Like, why would you want it to change by having more people? And my grandfather was like, well, that's sort of what you do. You want to grow the congregation. And I remembered making my little donation, and my 4 or 5-year-old brain made the connection. And I was like, hold on a second. Does Father Phil want more people in the church so that when they pass the plate, there's more people putting money on it? And right then, Grandpa seemed a little less thrilled with me. And he was like, no. Oh, no. That's not it at all. That's not it at all. That's not what it's about. I was like, okay, that's not what it's about. That's what you say. But inwardly, my little kid brain still didn't buy it. And you know what happened then? That seed of mistrust about the collection plate and the financial gain of growing your flock that I picked up then has over the years morphed into me wanting to keep organized religion at arm's length. And it's led me to think that ultimately growing your flock or growing your congregation or whatever it is sort of about money. It's about money and power. Now, don't misunderstand me. Power and money in the hands of a church can be used for tremendous amounts of good. And often, I'm sure it is. Oh, and by the way, my giving at the collection plate did, in fact, come back to me many times over. It really did. My grandfather was right about that. When he got all proud of me for donating my allowance to the Episcopalian Church's collection plate and said that it would come back to me, he was not wrong. And I saw it come back to me almost instantly because I found out that a 50-cent donation at church, not unlike single loaves of bread that can feed masses of the hungry, 50 donated cents had an incredible way of turning into a $7 Super Sundae and a $5 strawberry fribble after church. I remember, I did the math. I was like, I gave 50 cents at church. I got back like $13 worth of ice cream and milkshakes. There might be something to this. But it's stories like this one. It's stories like this one about Jim Bakker, not only his past, but more his present, that do very little to dispel the suspicions that I've been harboring since I was 4 about the Father Phils of this world. Oh, and by the way, Father Phil apparently bailed on the cloth to become, wait for it, an insurance salesman. Yeah, apparently Father Phil wasn't able to significantly grow the old flock to his satisfaction and decided to do something else with his life, which he then did. All right, so we're going to talk about what it is that the Reverend Jim Bakker, who somehow still miraculously has a career, is selling. But first, let's take a listen to a little bit of his show.
Is this, God is speaking to me about it. What he is saying is he is going to send judgment, and he's going to judge some people that we can't judge. You know, we're not to judge people, but he can judge.
Yeah.
And I believe there's going to be some things happening, and we're going to be shocked. There's coming a time when he said, the Bible says there will be no food to eat.
Oh no, no food to eat. Whatever shall we do? If judgment is coming and there's going to be no food to eat, oh, that's scary. Hopefully the Reverend Jim Bakker has a solution for us.
And if you do get any food, you have to sign over to the Antichrist. That means you've sold your soul to the devil.
Right.
But I don't want to sell my soul to the devil to get food. I don't want to have to be in league with the Antichrist to eat. Oh man, if only there was some form of televised salvation that I could count on to get me through this difficult time of judgment where food will be unbelievably scarce unless you're willing to shake hands with the devil for some barbecue. Whatever shall we do, Jim?
Right.
And you say, oh, it will never be that evil. What's going on right now? Half of America hates Jesus Christ. Half of America wants to destroy the president because he's standing up to save babies, that he stands up for religious freedom,
right,
and all. And they're making him out as the Antichrist, as an evil person. This is what's really, really sad. And it's time to be prepared, because it's coming a time when it will be too late
yes,
to get ready.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm glad we're getting there. We sort of got a little derailed with the Jim Bakker thing for a second there. He was talking about Trump, and I was just waiting on salvation. I mean, obviously, it's the end of days because half of America hates Jesus and half of America says Donald Trump is the Antichrist. I thought the Antichrist was a guy we had to be worried about because we'd have to make a deal with the Antichrist in order to get food during these difficult times. But I think we're getting back on track, and I think we're about to find out what it is that Jim Bakker's selling us.
Absolutely. And that's going to be a hellish 42 months on planet Earth. Is it?
42 months, that's an oddly specific number, but go on.
It says right here in the Bible. And he says that your silver and your gold is going to be worthless.
That's right.
Oh, no. Here I thought moving toward a cashless society with the Venmos and the PayPals and things of that nature, I thought that was a sign of the coming of apocalypse. You're telling me that the hard currency we've been amassing underneath the mattress for a rainy day such as this is going to be useless? I guess we'd probably better stock up on something now, but who has this magical food that will get us through the end of days?
So people have been storing away silver and gold for the last days.
Yeah.
The only thing that you are going to want when these times come is going to be food to eat.
I do get hungry.
Yeah.
And that's why we've spent our ministry for the last years putting together this food for survival.
That's right.
Yeah, there you have it. The Reverend Jim Bakker back up in the game, not only allowed to have a career, and by the way, it doesn't seem like he ever really went away. And I guess my mind is just a little extra boggled at this because I didn't know it was a thing that was happening. I didn't know it was a thing that was allowed to go on in America. I didn't know that he wasn't judged sternly enough in the court of public opinion to the point where he had to slink off with his tail between his legs and just hope that nobody remembered who the hell he was when he was walking down the street and made fun of him. No, he got straight back on TV and found immediately that there were people that were only too happy to send money and, buy survivalist rations. He's selling buckets of survivalist food for this end of days time. Your money will be no good. The judgment is coming, and there will be no food unless you are willing to make a deal with the Antichrist for the food, and then you're just going to be trading your soul for food, and what good is that? I know you're thinking of stocking away money, but guess what? It says in Ezekiel that your silver and gold will be worthless and pointless during this hideous period of time. So what you got to do is buy the Jim Bakker survivalist rations, which come in massive buckets. How much is this stuff going to run you? What exactly do you get? And why on earth would you also, at the same time you're buying survivalist buckets of food from Jim Bakker, want to invest in property in Branson, Missouri? Oh, all will be revealed.
I'm building an RV resort. I'm going to call it a resort. And it's going to have all kinds of things to do there. All we need is some people on fire for God. We need God's people that will stand together and bind devils, bind hell. We're in the last days.
You're waiting to get washed away. Radio.
Now, more AD on the radio.
Back once again, the ill behavior, delivering and giving you my musical savior. Back once again, it's your boy AD again. Nobody rock a body better than me. Back once again, the ill behavior, delivering and giving you a musical savior. Back once again, it's your boy AD.
So there are those days where the vast majority of the rest of the news community is talking about something else. And when they zig, we decide to zag. You and I, we need a break occasionally from what the hell it is everybody's talking about and arguing about. And if there's some really pressing issue that everybody's all bent out of shape about and arguing about and looking for the best incendiary headline to generate big clicks and big dollars about, we let them have that. And we're going to take it all in, and we're going to come in a couple days with a slightly more measured response to whatever the big brouhaha is. And on days like that, sometimes my mind starts wandering, and occasionally I just start leafing through the paper, or occasionally I just go down a rather dark wormhole on the interwebs, and I just sort of see what there is to see. And oftentimes I discover something that no one's talking about that I feel like maybe you and I should talk about. And today, weirdly enough, is the fact that Jim Bakker, yes, the PTL guy, still has a career. Now, you might have been aware of this. I was not. I was just under the impression that he went away. He went to jail for 5 years for doing all sorts of fraudulent and awful things. His reputation was unbelievably tarnished because it turned out that he had misappropriated all sorts of church funds for lavish lifestyles and millions of dollars worth of cars and houses and things of that nature. And then there was the fact that, well, this was how I was introduced to the plight of Jim Bakker. When I was about, I guess it was probably the late 80s, so I was probably about 8 years old. A buddy of mine's dad had a Playboy collection, and his family was out. We were leafing through it, and I came across a woman called Jessica Hahn, who I thought was rather easy on the eyes. And as a kid, I was like, I hear people read these articles as well. Seems to be silly, but there's a lot of articles and not as many pictures of the naked lady, so I'm just going to read an article, and I'll read about Jessica Hahn. And it was a bit much for my 8-year-old brain to take in, the fact that this woman had apparently had an affair with a televangelist that was now in jail, because I was like, I didn't think people in the church did bad things. And well, then I sort of realized, hold on a second, what the hell is going on around here? And years would go by, and I would piece little bits and things together, and I go, oh wait, that's the Jim Bakker guy, and oh, there's the woman on Howard Stern, and oh, okay, I'm starting to see what's happening here. Anyways, eventually my young brain put together Jim Bakker, and I realized that he'd gone to jail. And not for one moment did I think that this guy would still have a career, that this guy would be allowed to get back on television, or that people would start sending him their money again, or that they would buy things from him again. But as it turns out, they're only too quick to buy survivalist rations from him. Yeah, this is his new shtick. Maybe you're aware of this. It boggled my mind, and I felt you and I had to talk about it, because it's one of those things where it's just amazing to me that there are people either so mind-numbingly paralytically stupid or mind-numbingly paralytically afraid that they're willing to go, I'm going to send this guy my money, and I'm going to survive the end of days with his survivalist rations. Not only that, but I'm going to find salvation and get into heaven faster. But as you and I were talking about, he's selling these survivalist buckets of food. I believe you can get 7 years of food for $3,500, and it's sort of reconstituted glop. But Jim Bakker is apparently the only pastor that is concerned with your bowel movements, because the big plastic tubs that his sustainable glop comes in for the end of days serves a second purpose. Listen to this.
These buckets can be used, like if you live in the city, they're going to be a Portajohn for you to use. That is the potential.
Yeah. They can be a Portajohn for you to use. And you know what? He really seems to care about, well, your lower intestinal tract. Have a listen to this.
All these people here.
Yes, we do.
And people, and another thing that starts with P. People, well, they pee and we won't say the other word, okay? What are you going to do with the doo-doo?
What are you going to do with the doo-doo? Oh, I suppose all that food comes in those big plastic bins that could also be porta potties. But he really cares about it. Have a listen.
Do you have a plan? People eat, and people go to the bathroom.
Okay. Eliminate. Wow.
You say, Jim, that's nasty.
Well, it is.
What do you mean it's nasty?
Oh, brother. He said it.
I'm probably the only preacher in America that is concerned about your bowel movement.
This is great.
What are you going to shovel it with?
Oh.
He probably is the only preacher in America that's concerned with our bowel movements. But you know what? Salvation for your bowels is a bit of a giveaway. For, I think, just $600, you can get 1 year's worth of tasty food. And you know what? If you're thinking about it, the porta potty capabilities of the food containers that he's selling you, he's not even charging anything extra for that. It's unreal how much this guy cares.
Oh my goodness.
What are you going to dig a hole with? What are you going to do with the doo-doo?
And by the way, you're not watching what I'm watching. Maybe you've seen the show, maybe you haven't. But the production quality, not bad. This is not a cheap thing to create. So there's a massive, massive studio. There's a sound stage. There's been multiple and elaborate sets that have been constructed and built. There are tons of camera angles. There are obviously production teams of people creating this stuff, meaning it costs money to do, meaning people are sending him all kinds of money for reconstituted food stuff so that they can slop down whatever weird cream of potato oatmeal crap he's sending them, and then dutifully turn the bucket over and use it to eliminate said food. By the way, I'm guessing the turnaround time between Act A and Act B will be a short one. Ugh.
What are you going to do with the doo-doo? But what are you going to do?
It's true.
What are you going to do with it?
Leave the stimulation to the professionals.
Everyone is so smart.
KPRC, more stimulating talk radio.
There's something happening here, and you should know what it is. The dumbing up of America. Now, more AD on the radio.
So, it's incredibly bizarre that you and I have spent the majority of this show talking about disgraced televangelist who's come back with a vengeance, Jim Bakker, and the reconstituted slop that he's selling as buckets of survival food. But it's just too bizarre to ignore, and every time you think you got to the weirdest part of it, it's like an incredibly strange religious onion. Peel back a layer, boom, there's another one. So we've discussed now that he has been selling these $150 buckets of survivalist food that have a 25-year shelf life, and suggesting to you that as an added bonus, when the food goes through you rather quickly, as you could have imagined it might, you're going to have the advantage of the plastic bucket it came in to use as a porta potty. He said he's the only preacher that's concerned about your bowel movements. Good for him. And that would seem to be as strange as it could possibly be. Oh no, like I said, peel back a layer, boom, there's another one. He says the best place to survive the apocalypse that is coming is Missouri. Mm-hmm. Yep, specifically in the cabins, the RV resort that he's building in Missouri, where 6 bottles of water cost $150, and these buckets of food have a 25-year shelf life. He says that his cabins in Missouri are the safest place for the apocalypse that is coming, the religious apocalypse, the judgment that's coming. And, well, if you buy one now, you don't have to make a deal with the Antichrist, thereby giving up your soul in the future. Really a bargain when you think about it, at $150 a pop for this food. He's encouraging viewers, like I said, to buy his extreme survival warfare water bottles for $150. And, yeah, it's just unbelievably bizarre to me that this guy is allowed to still have a career. And I guess what the whole show has been getting at is that people are stupid. And people are afraid. I think that's the other part of it. Because you look at his audience, and there's not a person in there who's not studying for the final, if you know what I mean, and I think you do. They're an older bunch of folks, and they are perhaps trying everything they can possibly try to get good with God before they finally bow out, whether it be at the hands of the Lord in the religious apocalypse that Jim Bakker says is coming, or whether it be by somewhat more natural causes. And I think that's the disgusting part. It's the fear-mongering that's being used to separate old people from what little remains of their retirement. That makes me feel like if there's any justice whatsoever, there will be no escape, no matter how how many $150 buckets of survivalist food rations this guy purchases. He will burn in the fires of hell for all eternity. All right, then. That was fun. Let's you and I discuss who should choose your dating profile picture. Yes, we'll get to that a little later on, right after we delve into the news. Yeah, your online dating profile picture. If you are online dating, there's somebody that you should have choose your photo. There's a lot riding on it. Your profile picture, so much rides on it. Decides whether or not people are going to swipe left or right. And so many of my friends come to me. They're like, what do you think? This picture, this one? I don't know. I'm not really getting any of the swipes I'd like to be getting with this one. Maybe I should switch to this picture. What should my bio say? All of the above. And apparently, I'm not the person you should be asking. I mean, just in general, I'm not the person you should be asking for any sort of relationship advice at all, ever. But there's someone very specific that you should go to when it comes time to choose your online dating profile picture, and we'll get to that, like I said, after we go through the news of today. What in fact is going on in the world besides the fact that Jim Bakker has reemerged and is selling survivalist slop? Well, I didn't know you could do this. Have you ever heard of anybody changing the name of their child after they're born and named and all the above? I guess anything's possible, but I would have thought there would have been a waiting period or something. I don't know. Nevertheless, the case is Khloe Kardashian is reportedly considering changing her baby girl True's name. If you're changing the name of your child and your kid's called True, I suppose Untrue would be the obvious selection. But yeah, she's changing her baby girl's name from True to something else. Only though I think if she can think of something entirely more stupid and more pretentious, which will be a tough one. Steven Tyler of Aerosmith went on the record saying that he spent $2 million on cocaine. To which Charlie Sheen replied, must have been a fun afternoon. Barack and Michelle Obama signed a deal to produce shows and movies for Netflix. Is there anyone left in the world of politics, anyone left in the world of being a public servant that just wants to serve the public? Reality show stars are becoming politicians. Politicians are becoming reality show stars. It's just, yeah, all right. I mean, we don't know if Barack and Michelle are going to be involved in reality, but they are involved in the world of entertainment. They're producing shows and movies for Netflix. First up, a show about Roseanne's richer, more successful black neighbors. Bill and Hillary Clinton plan to keep a low profile in this year's midterm election contests. Yeah, Bill and Hillary Clinton plan to keep a low profile in this year's midterm election contests. Oh, well, fantastic. In other words, they're going to treat the whole country in 2018 the way Hillary treated Wisconsin in 2016. That was a mistake. Well, depending on who you ask. Some people are pretty stoked about it. Anyways, the Pope recently... Oh, gosh. We talked about this on the show the other day. We love the Pope. Pope's so even-tempered and easygoing, and the Pope says, it's not for me to judge. Who am I to judge? I'm not God. Only God can judge. Said you don't have to be Catholic to get into heaven. Just be a decent human being, and you won't end up in the other place. The place that Jim Bakker is definitely going to. But yeah, the Pope recently told a gay man, God made you like this, and God loves you like this. Oh, there you go. Wow. What a beautiful sentiment. God made you like this, and God loves you like this. I mean, I suppose if you buy into the idea of an omnipotent interventionist God, there are no mistakes. So everyone's been made the way they are for a reason. So God made you like this, God loves you like this. Well, that seems to hang together. Then, of course, the Pope was criticized by a bunch of people God made intolerant a-holes. So there's that. They were sent to try him, I suppose. An Australian man was recently arrested for flipping off the Prime Minister after the Prime Minister cut in line at a bar. In Australia, they do things a little differently. The Prime Minister, he goes to the bar, and then he cuts in front of you to get his beer faster. And then you flip off the Prime Minister. And then you get arrested, apparently. Although, in the dude's defense, in Australia, delaying someone from getting a drink is kind of sort of a worse crime than murder. Some restaurants in the New York City area are currently selling chicken wings coated in actual gold. Yes, chicken wings coated in actual gold, which is excellent news for anyone who's ever wanted to poop like King Tut. In a new sexual survey, it turns out that Getting busy between the sheets, bow chicka wow wow style, that's actually good for your cognitive functions. How so? Well, apparently doctors and scientists now have conclusive proof that frequent sex can improve your memory. Yeah, doctors are now saying that frequent sex can absolutely improve your memory. Really? Wow. Well, let me just say. Wait, what were we talking about? And where did I put my keys? Police arrested a man ranting about President Trump outside of his Miami golf course. He was charged with one count of impersonating MSNBC. Harvard will present Hillary Clinton with a medal this coming Friday. Yeah, Harvard will present Hillary Clinton with a medal this coming Friday. It will be made of solid gold and engraved with the words, "Congratulations, you participated in the 2016 election." Good for her. The royal wedding happened this past Saturday, just gone by. Of course, for some people, it was the biggest day of the year. We call these people losers. I continue to get emails about my feelings on the royal wedding. And like I said, the royals sort of leave me a scotch nonplussed. I never really understood why they were there. Yeah, I grew up in England. Yeah, I'm half English. And the royals are fine, I suppose. But Oliver Cromwell rather famously took their totalitarian dictatorship away from them and said, we're no longer going to be ruled by a monarchy, we're going to be ruled through democracy, and this is going to be a government of the people that you will have no part in. We're taking away your power. And then he left him with a whole bunch of power in the form of masses of land and all kinds of money, and really still massive, incredible amounts of power, just no power to government. So just no power to govern. So they were left unencumbered of the dubious and difficult task of having to lead a people, and left with the tons of cash they'd amassed over the years. And I kind of failed to see the problem if you're the royal family. I never really understood why the royal family still existed. They were in possession of sums of money that could have solved all of the hunger in England, perhaps all of the hunger in the world, and they were allowed to hold on to that, even though they took it in a way the people that were a part of the English Revolution very much objected to. So I never fully got why that was a thing. So the royal wedding, kind of no big deal. Although, like we were talking about on the show yesterday, I very much appreciated how, it seems like Meghan and Harry are really nice to each other. Seems like they're down for each other. Seems like they've got each other's backs. And for the entire world, and make no mistake about it, the entire world was watching. For the entire world to see that. For the entire world to see that, hey, one person from one country with one color of skin can marry another person from another country with a different color of skin, and it's no big deal, and they can still get along just great. And the whole world needs to recognize this. In a day and age where we are still, in parts of this world, this nation in particular, a bit backward, or a lot backward, or shame-generatingly, mind-numbingly racist in some cases, I think that's an excellent example for them to be setting for the rest of the world. So there's that. People thought there was an eclipse during the royal wedding. Turns out it was just the sun being blocked out by Prince Charles' ears. Nothing to worry about. There's a story floating around that Meghan Markle allegedly once dated a porn star. Well, at least you didn't marry one, replied one Kanye West. Whether or not she dated a porn star, don't necessarily know. But I will say this. We talked about it on the show yesterday, and we'll talk about it a little bit today because it remains absolutely remarkable. The Queen is now related to a drug dealer. Yeah. Meghan Markle has, I believe it's a nephew, who grows marijuana legally, but still is a marijuana grower, and came up with a new strain of marijuana in honor of the royal wedding called Markle Sparkle. There you go. Apparently it's really good for anxiety and panic attacks and insomnia and things of that nature, which probably means that the Queen will want to try some as soon as possible. Oh, and allegedly it smells like blueberries, but there you go. The Queen, thanks to the fact that her grandson dipped his tadger into the colonies, is now related to a pot dealer. And you kind of gotta love that. Study finds that most relationships start start off with terrible or awkward sex. Yeah, if you just got together with someone and everything is not all that you'd hoped it would be between the sheets, or perhaps you're worried that you're not all they hoped you would be between the sheets, don't worry about it. That's par for the course. That's normal. A study finds that most relationships start off with terrible or awkward sex. Oh, hold on a second. Does that mean that people can have sex that isn't terrible or awkward? I'm asking for a friend. Oh man, that's some music. That means the show's over. We didn't get a chance to talk about who it should be that picks out your online dating profile picture. Oh well, that'll be something to look forward to tomorrow, because you and I tackle big and important issues around here. Thank you for hanging out. Have a good one.